Hello and welcome to Direct Talk. I'm Salam Berhane, your host for the day. Joining us in the studio is Muz Gidey, researcher of Tigray Institute of Policy Studies. Thank you, Muz, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with a general question. What makes what happened in Tigray a genocide?
What makes the thing that happened in Tigray a genocide can be seen from multiple vantage points. One is from the very concept of genocide. The very concept of genocide is inclusive of 5 major acts, which includes genocide by killing, genocide by causing physical and mental harm or suffering, genocide by creating a condition that threatens the very existence of a people. And the fourth one is genocide by causing damage to reproductive health or fertility of a given society. And the fifth one is by causing disintegration of society, or by separating children from their parents, or by causing a decay in a given society. So from those 5 major elements of genocide, almost we can say all of them has been committed in Tigray. Physical destruction of individuals, mass killing and execution has been there. And causing severe physical and mental trauma has been there. And creating the very condition that causes mass death, like exposure to disease like COVID-19, and causing man-made starvation has been there. So we can say from the very elements of genocide, all of them has been committed in Tigray. And the second is from the nature of the war. The nature of the war has been a total war, which wasn't constrained neither by law nor by morality or common values of civilized society. It wasn't constrained by law because that weapons threshold, the nature of actors which have been killed and massacred, and even the nature of mobilization used was out of the formal type of war. So it was by nature a total war. And historically, total wars are always identified with genocide, and they cannot not be genocidal because their very nature doesn't respect law, doesn't respect morality, it doesn't respect common sense of a civilized society. Then they are easily to descend to genocide. And the third element is from the very impact which has been witnessed in Tigray. Thousands of innocent civilians has been killed because they are Tigrayans. The political elite of Tigray has been persecuted, killed, and there are many people still whose whereabouts is not known. So the very intention of destroying a given society, in part or in whole, has been demonstrated both in action and from point of view of the nature of the war declared against Tigray, and also conceptually, which has been enshrined in the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide, all has been fulfilled. So from those points, we can say actually what has been committed in Tigray is a genocide.
Okay. What kind of societies are predisposed to genocide? What are the most important elements in culture or economic conditions that enable it?
Greater predisposition is reflected in societies wherein there is extremist worldviews or ideologies, like radical nationalism, chauvinism, or elements of fascism. In the presence of those elements, most societies are predisposed to fall into committing crime against humanity and genocide because they believe that everything that happens in that society is because of a certain group which has been attributed with all kinds of dehumanizing characteristics, all kinds of satanizing elements, all kinds of stereotypes and names which makes people ready to kill or to cause mayhem and destruction. So this is one. The second is the economic condition. Most of the genocides has been committed in a context of a kind of political and economic crisis. So the economic crisis, not every economic crisis causes genocide. Not every political crisis leads to genocide, but in the presence of both economic and political crisis, and in the presence of extremist ideas, nationalism, or a kind of revolution, wherein the control over the use of violence has been in the hand of rogue people, then when those all elements are qualified in a given context, then there is a greater predisposition to fall into genocide than societies which have stable political culture, which has normal nationalism or democratic nationalism, or societies which has advanced politics, or societies that have stable economic condition.
Okay, and how does that relate to Ethiopia's current condition?
To the Ethiopian reality, yes, we had political crisis which could have been handled in a different way than it was handled, like what happened, and there was also political economic problems. There were fault lines, ethnic fault lines, national fault lines, political fault lines, and there was also element of polarization. Ethnic nationalism has been there in Ethiopia, but it wasn't polarized to the degree that it has caused inter-ethnic violence after the coming of especially the current incumbent. So both economic problem was there, political crisis was there, and the radicalization of relationship. By the way, radicalization is one of the 10 stages of genocide. So this has been also committed. So almost all the conditions that predispose a given society to the brink of committing genocide has been there before the action. And the other point is because there was because those people who came to power were also fanning certain kind of fascist elements. I dare say fascism has been practiced in Ethiopia during the Derg regime, but the government in power now is a new breed of fascism, which is armed with modern arsenals of propaganda, hate speech, dehumanization, and instigation of people to violence. So all those things has been there, and because of those contexts, then those people have used the propaganda, the dehumanization, and other economic and political differences among ethnic groups, and in scapegoating Tagaru as the very victim or as the very cause which has brought the country to this level of crisis. So once you brought the whole nation to this level, what they were expecting was only a single spark, and that single spark is the alleged claim that TPLF has attacked the northern division, which wasn't true actually, because before that Tigray has been under siege, Tigray has been under fear and intimidation because of different military mobilization from both from Eritrea and Ethiopian government, and Tigray has been actually in a negative peace or in a silent war because the roads were blocked and Tigray has been marginalized and the budgets were not coming. Everything that they can do without firing the guns has been there. So the pretext that Tigray has begun the war by attacking the northern division is out of truth. And in any case, they used that one to declare war, and that war was total war, and that total war has given birth to a full-blown genocide.
Okay, let's discuss for a moment the terms fascism and chauvinism. If you could define them first, and then explain their relevance to our current situation with Ethiopia.
Fascism comes in different shades and colors. So it will be unwise to give one universal definition because in different countries they come in different forms, in different approaches, and the way fascism manifests itself in a given historical condition is also dependent on the specific conditions of the country, the period. But what I can say is, commenting about fascism is that they try to polarize relationship in society. They try to use fault lines, contradictions, by promising that they are going to return you to a glamorous past, or a return or a promise to a utopian kind of development. They promise you, but without providing any kind of tangible economic or political reform. But instead, they depend on using violence as instrument of governance and as instrument of rule. And they also come with typical element of fascism is that they are known for having demagogue leaders who believe in convincing people by speaking than by having a coherent policy of development or a coherent policy of education. Rather, they believe in indoctrinating people with hate, indoctrinating people with violence, and brainwashing people so that the people can rise and fall like a sledgehammer in implementing their policies of mayhem and destruction. Because why they focus on violence and destruction? Because always they have a black sheep, they have a scapegoat against whom they want to settle all the problems of the country. So that's common features of the fascism. When we come to chauvinism, chauvinism is a belief that a certain ethnic group, a certain cultural group, a certain collectivity's values, attitudes, way of life, belief, or ideology is supreme that the others has to accept without question. So in societies like Ethiopia, where multifaceted diversity is the reality, imposing such kind of belief and attitude has always been a cause of fear or a cause of danger that has threatened to bring Ethiopia into disintegration. So chauvinism has been there in different forms, and mainly Amhara chauvinism has been the central problem of Ethiopian politics. That's why the federal arrangement and the federal dispensation has been designed to curb the return of those old zombie attitudes and thinkings, in particular Amhara chauvinism or chauvinism in general. So chauvinism is characterized by this, and the federalism was designed to cure this disease. However, when those extremist forces come to the political, to the helm of Ethiopian politics, what they did is they want to dismantle federalism because that's the only cure which can give an end to their history.
Okay. And not to say that genocide is acceptable anywhere, but would the war have been acceptable if it was specifically aimed, or if it was specifically anti-TPLF instead of what it has been? It's been targeting the people of Tigray. So,
in the first place, I don't see any reasonable ground to make a differentiation between TPLF and Tigray in the current context, because Tigray and TPLF, in the eye of the enemy, in the eye of those chauvinists and fascists, they are one and the same. But even if that we make an artificial division in this case, I don't believe that there is any people, even not a terrorist group, not even Daesh and Al-Qaeda, who deserves to be punished by genocide, because genocide is beyond any kind of thing that we can imagine. So it will not be acceptable at all.
Okay. So how does the genocide in Tigray relate to the regional structure of peace and security in the Horn of Africa and the survival of Ethiopia as a whole?
Wherever genocide has been committed, it has caused regional instability. What happened in Rwanda has caused instability and political crisis in the neighboring countries and in the Great Lakes region. What happened in Kosovo, between the Serbs and the Kosovos, and between the Serbs and the Croats, has actually caused a problem in the Balkan region. And so in general, we can say theoretically and empirically, we can say wherever genocide has happened, it has a spillover effect into the region. When we come practically to the Ethiopian and Horn of Africa reality, Ethiopia is an anchor state. So anything that happens in the negative in Ethiopia is going to affect negatively in the Horn of Africa. And practically, there is also a new danger which the world has to be very careful. And it has to be taken as a warning, actually. The involvement of the government of Somalia, Eritrea, in the internal affairs of Ethiopia in order to annihilate the Tigray people and the Tigrayan elite shows there is a build-up of a regional structure of genocide. So this regional structure of genocide is going to be a very grave danger to regional peace and security. It's not only a danger to regional peace and security, it's going to be also a bad example to other neighboring regions, both those regions beyond the Red Sea and to adjacent regions like the central, the Eastern African region and the Central Africa region, or even to other regions in other continents, because it's unprecedented how different states has committed themselves to ally with a government which has declared genocide on its people is unprecedented experience. So we can say it's not only a matter of usual case of lack of peace and security, but a regional structure of genocide is being built up in the Horn of Africa.
Okay. So what the world hears and sees about Ethiopia and how the regime perceives their conundrum appears to be completely different. What role does denial play in this?
Well, sometimes when you begin denying, you also deny the things that affects you. So we say that genocide has been committed in Tigray, and I strongly believe that, and the evidences abundantly show that. the government of Ethiopia and its allies are in denial mode. So the same thing, what's actually happening to themselves, they are also in denial mode because they don't want to accept what they have committed, because they don't want to accept what the external world is also saying. Otherwise, the world has witnessed one of a gruesome massacre of a people with the intention to exterminate. The whole gruesome stories of rape, mass killing, even excremation has been witnessed and has been committed in front of the world. So the world is witnessing that this historical ancient nation with a very deep history of statehood, with a very advanced cultures of religion and secular culture and values, is descending actually into a new law which no world has expected Ethiopia to go. Yeah, I can say that they are in total denial.
Okay. So how do societies curb hate speech, and in relation to our current situation, how has hate speech affected us?
In the context of genocide, it takes years, it takes even decades to unlearn what regimes has actually inculcated in the mind of people, because the way those regimes try to inculcate hate speech, dehumanizing attitude, stereotype, is in a very subtle manner, because they use this dark psychology, a way of it's a mechanism of mind manipulation. Because what they did is to convince people that killing, maiming, causing mayhem and destruction is actually morally acceptable and a valid action. So to undo and unlearn, to make people do away with such kind of views, it will take decades. But generally, what's so important in avoiding such kind of hate speech or related activities is to build a culture of peace, culture of tolerance, and a greater level of democratization will undo, and this will also take decades.
Okay. So we're aware that social media intensifies hate speech, but how has it affected the current war?
In the Ethiopian context, it's not only the social media. Actually, the informal media in Ethiopia has been there. Orality is one of the major features of many of Ethiopian nations and nationalities. In Amhara, orality is very robust feature. In Tigray, orality is there. If you go to Afar in Somalia, Somali society, orality is there, and many of the societies even they have oral histories. If you go to Oromo, the same thing. So orality has been there, and oral narratives has been shaping the way a given people is depicted. And to just take you a little back in history, almost those oral things have orality and history of orality, and the values have been used to denigrate people. Almost every nationality has got names. We call names actually. Every country has, every people call names to each other, but the way names have been crafted in Ethiopia is to denigrate, to dehumanize. So the new social media has grabbed that historical continuity and it has taken it to a new level. And many of the negative things, the stereotype, the demonization, and the scapegoating of Tigrayans has been abundantly there in the social media. And even in the formal media, electronic media, the private and state-owned media have been also fanning that. Almost at the same time, if you go to infotainment medias, edutainment medias, or entertainment medias, or mainstream medias, they have been propagating the same dehumanizing message. So it was well used, well articulated, and well designed in a way it invokes uncontrollable hatred within members of Ethiopian society to commit crime against Tagaru.
Okay. How can the balance between freedom of speech and curbing hate speech, how is the balance perceived?
Well, this is a very complicated question because there is always a paradox. There is a question of to speak or not to speak. And the moment you speak, sometimes words can kill. And in order to avoid killing and the negative consequence of freedom of speech, you don't have to also silence the very important attribute of being human being. So there is no one way, there is no silver bullet for such kind of question, but it depends upon the society, it depends upon the culture, it depends upon the political context. So as to me, there has to be a way of avoiding, respecting at least the right of people to speak. And then there has to be also equal focus on ensuring that those people who are enjoying their freedom of speech are not going to cause any suffering and harm on other people. So do no harm will be the golden rule.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That wraps up our program for the day. Thank you for joining us, and see you next week with another guest.